This is a direct message addressed to Iran's armed and security forces, you who wear a military uniform to defend the Iranian nation, and who are now facing a historic choice. The name of Iran's exiled crown prince is resurfacing amid soaring tensions inside Tehran, as political uncertainty deepens across the country. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is now facing what many describe as an unprecedented scale of anti-government protests, with anger spilling into major streets and squares. The unrest grew massive and violent in a short span, triggering speculation that a foreign hand may be pushing events from behind the scenes. However, reports say Reza Pahlavi is emerging as one factor behind the sudden surge in unrest, after his messages gained rapid traction online. Iranian protesters hit the streets on January 8 soon after Pahlavi's calls for demonstrations, turning online mobilization into real-world confrontation. Who is Reza Pahlavi? Reza Pahlavi is Iran's exiled crown prince, a title he retained symbolically even though the monarchy was abolished decades ago. He is the son of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran, whose rule ended with the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The Pahlavi dynasty was ousted during that revolution, replacing the monarchy with the Islamic Republic led by clerical authority. Pahlavi left Iran at 17 for U.S. Air Force training, expecting to return to a stable country and a defined future. Instead, he was stranded abroad as the revolution toppled the monarchy, leaving him unable to go back home. Over time, the royal family was forced into permanent exile, becoming political symbols rather than national leaders. Today, he advocates for a secular and democratic Iran, pitching a future that separates religion from the state. He has called for a national referendum on Iran's political future, arguing that Iranians should decide the system that governs them. At the same time, he says he rejects a return to an absolute monarchy, presenting himself as a transitional figure rather than a king-in-waiting. For Iranian monarchists, he remains a powerful symbol, representing a pre-revolution identity and an alternative to clerical rule. But critics frequently recall Savak and other past rights abuses under the Shah, arguing the monarchy's legacy is not only nostalgia. Support for Pahlavi inside Iran remains divided, with some viewing him as hope and others viewing him as out of touch. He says he rejects violence against the regime, insisting that street action should not become armed conflict. He also opposes armed groups like the MEK, distancing himself from militant tactics and controversial opposition factions. Instead, he calls for a peaceful transition, arguing that mass participation and unity can force political change without civil war. Why exiled prince is in news now? His message is now being linked to anti-Khamenei protests, with supporters saying his call helped unify the anger into action. His name is resurfacing again as Tehran's unrest intensifies, making him a central reference point in protest slogans and online debate. Iran's leadership has accused a foreign hand in the uprising, and Pahlavi's prominence is being used to reinforce that narrative. He is based in the United States, which makes him highly visible internationally, but also easy for Tehran to portray as Western-backed. His controversial visit to Israel in 2023 still shadows him, especially as regional tensions remain high and polarizing. Supporters portray him as the international face of the opposition, arguing he can connect Iran's protests with global attention and pressure. How exiled prince triggered protests. On January 6, Reza Pahlavi released a video message aimed directly at Iranians inside the country, urging them to organize. He called on Iranians to take to the streets on Thursday and Friday, setting a specific timetable meant to create nationwide momentum. After his appeal, protest momentum reportedly spiked, with more videos, calls, and coordination circulating through social platforms. Anti-regime slogans gained traction quickly, as chants and hashtags spread between cities and across different social groups. By January 888, protests turned violent in Tehran, according to the Associated Press, as clashes intensified between demonstrators and security forces. Some reports claimed chants of Pahlavi will return were heard, showing that monarchist symbolism has re-entered the protest landscape. Demonstrators were also reported to be calling for Khamenei's ouster, shifting anger from economic issues to direct demands for political change. On January 8, Iran's internet was reportedly shut down across the country, limiting communication and slowing the spread of protest footage. Pahlavi condemned the blackout and called it a communication war, arguing the regime is trying to isolate citizens from each other and the world. He also warned that more action plans against the regime would follow, implying he intends to keep directing protest tactics. And Pahlavi said pressure on Khamenei will continue, framing the current unrest as the beginning of sustained mobilization rather than a one-off event.
و قطعاً توجه کردید که ازدحام جمعیت باعث میشه که نیروها پس بروند و امکان ریزش رو به سمت شما بیشتر میکنن. بنابراین مهم استش که این انضباط و گستردگی رو حفظ بکنیم. من اولین فراخوان خود را امروز با شما در میان میگذارم و از شما دعوت میکنم که این جمعه و پنجشنبه 18 و 19 دی ماه را سر ساعت 8 شب همگی چه در خیابان‌ها یا حتی از منازل خودتون شروع به شعار سر دادن بکنید. در نتیجه بازخورد این حرکت‌ها
Reza Pahlavi is expected to visit Mar-a-Lago in Florida next week, a trip that is already fueling speculation about possible political outreach. However, U.S. President Donald Trump said meeting him would not be appropriate at this time, signaling caution about being seen as choosing Iran's next leader. Trump's comments suggest he is not ready to back the Israel-aligned opposition figure as a potential leader for Iran, at least not openly or formally. Trump added, "I'm not sure that it would be appropriate at this point to do that as president," distancing himself from the idea of endorsement. Even so, Trump described Pahlavi, the son of Iran's last Shah toppled in 1979, as a nice person, offering a compliment without political commitment.